All right. Well, good morning, everybody. I'm happy to be really in person with so many of you. It's been a long time, and it's something to celebrate, isn't it? It's really fun to be together again at Christmas time. I didn't know I was going to be sitting next to a Christmas tree. Ho, ho, ho. So, there's so many things to celebrate these days. We're at the end of June. There were a lot of things in June, and I'll bet you celebrated some of them. June 1st, you know what that was, right? It was International Dinosaur Day. Now, if you're in my age category, you could probably celebrate that. I certainly did. June 4th was a triple header. We had National Cheese Day, we had National Donut Day, and National Hug Your Cat Day. I don't make these up. They're on the internet. And of course, National Yo-Yo Day. And my favorite was in June 10th. We had National Ballpoint Pen Day. Wow. Who doesn't celebrate your ballpoint pens? Especially when you're getting ready to write a tithing check to the center here. You want to make sure your ballpoint pen is working. Yeah, so there's things in July that we're going to be celebrating too. July 1st is National Joke Day. Yeah, so you can tell all the jokes you want on that day. It's legal. July 3rd is another popular one. It's International Cherry Pit Spitting Day. And then July 10th is Bald is In Day. Now, I'm not looking at anyone out there. And one of my favorites is July 15th. It's Be a Dork Day. It's also Cow Appreciation Day. So we've got so many things we could be celebrating all through the month. But of course, next Sunday, we know what we're going to be celebrating, right? What's next Sunday? 4th of July, of course. We'll celebrate that too. And some people will probably just celebrate hot dogs. But hopefully, the thing that we really celebrate is our independence. I think every American should be celebrating next Sunday because, a lot of countries, I have several friends who got discouraged with our country and they moved to different other countries. And they're kind of having a hard time right now with some of the lockdowns going on. And I keep thinking you should have just stayed right here. The grass is always greener on the other side, but really, what's greener than North Carolina? Nothing. So we're going to be celebrating our independence and this beautiful land of the free, home of the brave. We are so blessed to be here. And this is not about politics, believe me. Politics, in my opinion, is a broken system. And I think the word says it all. Poly means many. Ticks are blood-sucking parasites. So that kind of says a lot about the whole political thing, right? It's just my opinion. Don't tell anybody I said that. So I'm really saying that we should all be proud to be American. I think every person on this planet should be proud to be of whatever country they live in, because our countries really take on the energy of the people that live there. And so it's important that we really stand up for our country and that other people stand up for theirs. So we're very blessed to live on this planet. This is a beautiful planet, and she is a living being. I'll be talking a little bit about that in a moment. And yet how often we take our freedoms for granted, don't we? Especially in this last year and a half. People are a little concerned about some of our freedoms, some of our rights. We don't really know where the world is going, but we are a part of it. So today I want to talk about America's destiny. And I love what you put in here, what someone put in here on the little flyer. The last paragraph of that is from the Unveiled Mysteries, which is the first book in the I Am series, which is Saint Germain's teachings. And I've been reading those for probably 40 some years. And there's a series of books that I've been having a group. In fact, my friend Mara is part of the group that comes to my house every week. The series of books is called Telos, T-E-L-O-S. And that's, I won't go into that in detail, but Telos is a name of an underground city, a subterranean city where Saint Germain is very involved. And it happens to be in Mount Shasta, California. So it's no accident that we are here. Now, most of us were probably born in this country, but some of us maybe came here with parents when we were children, or maybe some of you moved here in later years. But if you're here, There's a reason you're here. I think we are all destined to be here at this time. We are the ones who are bringing forth what is unfolding right now. I think it's our heritage. I think it's our responsibility to use our God-given power to bring about America's destiny. You know, our nation has a mystical history. Now, you won't read this in the history books that you had in school. America is a nation that was rooted in a belief that a nation could exist that had its own divine destiny. And the men that formed, it was mostly men that formed our country in the first place, had a vision. They had a vision that a nation could exist where freedom of spirit reigned supreme. And that's what we have enjoyed for all of the years that we have been here. Several of the founders, including George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, Ben Franklin, John Adams, and some others, actually believed themselves to have a destiny. And destiny did seem to guide their footsteps. Now, I'm going to be talking some about George Washington. He had visions. I mean, he had real visions, like paranormal visions that something appeared in front of his face. He had quite a few of them, actually. But I want to talk a little bit first about his growing up years. When George was growing up, we could say he was not very motivated. Some people said he was lazy. His family said he was lazy. Most people said in those days he was a very lazy person. Now, George wasn't real comfortable with his peers. For one thing, he was very tall. Anybody know how tall George Washington was? He was 6'2". And in those days, they didn't actually measure anyone's height until the person died, and the undertaker had to know what kind of a coffin to put him in. So that's when he was measured and found to be 6'2". Now, when I was a kid, I went to Mount Vernon. Has anyone been to Mount Vernon in Virginia? It was the home of George Washington that he grew up in. And I remember they would take us a tour through all the rooms, and all the bedrooms had these little beds that looked like a child's bed to me. You know, now we have king size beds, but these beds look so small. And the tour guide said that's because people in those days were not very tall, not as tall as we are in these days. But George was. He kind of towered above all of his friends. George Washington also had pock marks on his face from a childhood disease he had had. And so he felt very uncomfortable in his skin. He felt kind of awkward around his peers. He felt unattractive. He wasn't even a very good student. In fact, he was a poor student, except in math. He did excel in math. And for a while, when he grew up, he became a civil engineer because that was a good way to use his math skills. Mostly growing up, he helped on the family farm. And he assumed that he would grow up and be a farmer. I don't want to say just be a farmer. Farming is very important in this country and all countries. But he didn't have any other ideas of what he wanted to be, so he assumed that's what he would be throughout his life. He didn't really discover his true passion until he entered the militia. And he found that he really loved being in the militia. He loved commanding regiments. He was a great commander. Now, George was not religious, but he was often seen out in the fields praying. And he would pray that he would receive a higher calling. He had several siblings, but his favorite sibling was his brother, Charles. He just adored Charles and looked up to him. One day, Charles came to him and told George about a dream that he had had. In fact, he had it 3 times. So he thought, I really have to tell George about this dream. It's really important. And in this dream, he was told that George would become the head of a nation. He would one day be given a title, president, and he would make the colonies a nation that would be called the United States of America. He told George, you better start preparing to carry the burden of the country because this is what's coming. I saw it 3 times. He said, you know, stop wasting time on all the other stuff you're doing. Prepare yourself. Of course, we know now how prophetic that was. Now, George Washington also had real visions, people that appeared in front of him. One of them was his maternal grandmother. He had never met her because she actually died in childbirth, giving birth to his mother. But he had seen pictures of her. And one day, well, as an aside, George had been dating a girl. Her name was Elizabeth. Everybody was always bugging George Washington. When are you going to get married? When are you going to start a family? Settle down. And he just hadn't found the right girl. But he was dating a girl named Elizabeth, and he thought, well, maybe I'll propose to her. So one day, his maternal grandmother appeared in front of him. It really startled him. And she had one thing to say to him. She said, "She is not your true mate. She's not your true mate." Of course, we know now his true mate was Martha, who he would meet a few years later, and they had a wonderful marriage. So anyway, as it turned out, a little bit later, the girl, Elizabeth, started acting weird, and he just didn't even like her anymore, and they broke up. So that was a good thing. Always listen to your grandmother. Any grandmothers here? Okay, they listened to us, right? You betcha. Now, when George Washington was 26, he was an alcoholic. I didn't know that before. He was an alcoholic. He spent a lot of time at a tavern down the road from his home, Timothy's Tavern. And he also hid bottles of whiskey in the barn. One day he was in the barn, kind of imbibing in the whiskey, and a being appeared in front of him, a literal figure. He could see through it, but it was a person. It was a male figure, and it looked just like him. And what it said to him is, "I am your soul. If you cannot control your appetite for drink, you can never again command a regimen. I am your soul, and I am sorry to see you betraying me. You were destined for service to your country, but you shall now go down to a drunkard's grave." Now, that was a wake-up call for George, 26 years old. And he knew that he had to get over his addiction to alcohol, and he did. He committed himself to getting over it. His family was very helpful. When they saw that he was getting the urge to drink, they would distract him or take him somewhere. They were very helpful, and he did manage to get over that addiction. And Bill, maybe you were there in another lifetime. Maybe you were the one that helped him through that too. You think? I'll bet you. But the most important vision I want to talk about that George Washington had, and you may have seen this online, it's been in print for a long time. This happened in the year of 1777 in Valley Forge. It was a horribly winter, a really brutal winter. His men, they were stationed somewhere and they were not moving, but his men were sick. They were dying. They were freezing cold. See, George didn't have enough money to really supply enough food and warm clothing for his men. He was always trying to get Congress to help out or get other people that were wealthy to help out. So they had enough, but he never really had enough. And his men were sick and they were dying. And George himself was feeling very sick. He was very despondent. So one day he just was very depressed. He went into his tent. He told everyone that he did not want to be disturbed. Just leave me alone. And he spent the whole day in his tent. At some point in that day, he felt a presence. And he thought, that's strange. I asked not to be disturbed. What is this? And a figure started to unfold, to appear in front of him. It was a figure of a woman, a beautiful woman. And he was really taken aback. He was startled. He didn't know what to say or what this person was all about. She stared at him for a long time. And he stared at her. And finally, she spoke. She said, "Son of the Republic, look and learn." And she pointed in a certain direction. And as she pointed, she kind of faded out. And when he looked in that direction, a scene unfolded. He was shown that there would be a country. It would go all the way from the Atlantic Ocean to the Pacific. He was shown villages and cities and towns sprouting up all across this land, and that it would be very heavily populated. It was also revealed to him that this country would face 3 challenges. Now, the people that have interpreted his vision believe that the first vision that he saw, the first challenge that he was told of, was most likely the Civil War. The second one was interpreted by most people that he was probably seeing World Wars I and II. The third one seems to indicate some sort of an invasion of the United States, and that we would nearly lose the fight if it were not for some kind of divine intervention. That really struck me because that feels like what we might be going through right now. Who knows? And each time that she pointed, she would disappear and he would see a new vision. And he saw the word union. Now, finally, she reappeared to him, and this is what she said. Son of the Republic, what you have seen is thus interpreted. 3 perils will come upon the Republic. The most fearful is the third, passing which the whole world united shall never be able to prevail against her. Let every child of the Republic learn to live for his God, his land, and union. He had been shown the birth, the progress, and the destiny of our country, the Republic of the United States. And he heard the words, in union, she will have strength. In disunion, her destruction. And there's so much disunion right now going on. So we need to pull that back into being united. United, not just in our country, but really the whole world needs to start standing united instead of being at war with each other. So George Washington was not the only American to ever have experiences of divine intervention. There's a man named Manly Hall who wrote a book called The Secret Destiny of America. Has anyone read that? I haven't read that, but I saw a portion of it where he said that the Declaration of Independence is not only a mystical document, but that the signers were urged on by an apparition from the balcony of Independence Hall. Now, the signers of the Declaration of Independence had been debating for hours. They were in Independence Hall in a room. They had made sure the door was locked. They had a guard out there to make sure they would not be interrupted. And they were debating over and over what kind of things they want in this document, what they didn't want. Finally, they heard a voice from the balcony, and it startled them because they thought they were alone. And the voice said, sign that parchment. Sign, and not only for yourselves, but for all ages. For that parchment will be the textbook of freedom, the Bible of the rights of man forever. Now, many people believe that that apparition was Saint Germain. And I appreciate that you said so much about Saint Germain, because I wasn't going to talk a whole lot about him. So now people at least know a little more about him. I will talk a little about him in a moment, but anyway, Saint Germain is very much interested in America. He has been our benefactor for hundreds of years, and his mission is to make sure that we unfold as the heart of America. More about that in a moment. America was created to inspire and protect the human spirit. Carolyn Mace wrote a book about sacred contracts, and she believes that America has a sacred contract. And I believe that the protector of that sacred contract is the ascended master, Saint Germain. It's his whole focus, and he needs us to help him. Now, I want to talk a little about a spiritual hierarchy. We're familiar with the word hierarchy, right? Our corporations have a hierarchy. You might start out in the lower levels and work your way all the way up to CEO. That's a hierarchy. Our government, you work your all the way up to president or king, queen, whatever. These are hierarchical systems. Well, many of us haven't learned about it, but there is a spiritual hierarchy as well. We're at the lower rungs, just in case you wonder. There are ascended masters and cosmic beings, which include angels, archangels, Elohim, that we really haven't been taught much about until these days. These teachings are coming out a lot now. Saint Germain is the spiritual hierarch, or let's say representative, of the coming 2,000 years, what we know of as the Aquarian Age. Now, you might be familiar, we have been in the Piscean age for the last 2,000 years, and Jesus has been the hierarch of the Piscean age. But we are right now in the bridge between the Piscean age moving into the Aquarian age. That takes probably about 140 years to get fully into it. So because Jesus was the hierarch, the overseer of the whole last 2,000 years, that's probably the reason he's the only one we are aware of who ever made his ascension. But there are really thousands of ascended masters, people who go from this third dimensional physical reality into a higher frequency, a higher vibration. They're as real as we are. We just don't see them because our eyes only see a certain bandwidth, and so we don't see them. But so right now, because we're in the middle of the Piscean and the Aquarian age, Jesus and Saint Germain are working together. And once we get fully into the Aquarian age, Saint Germain will be the hierarch or the representative for the next 2,000, and Jesus will be moving to a higher form of service for the planet, because there are many levels of service. And so this knowledge is really being brought out now that we're moving into the Aquarian age. I'm sure you've all heard it. And if you are in my age category, you remember the song, The Dawning of the Age of Aquarius by the Fifth Dimension, back when we were teenagers or whatever. Well, that was really talking about these times. So for a moment, I want to go back to that apparition that George Washington had appear in front of him in Valley Forge. It was a woman figure. And that leads me to the story of the Statue of Liberty. How many have been to New York, seen the Statue of Liberty? Lots of you. And, if you look in Wikipedia, you'll probably see that it was a statue that was sculpted by a sculptor in France, and then it was taken apart, shipped across the ocean, and gifted to the United States from France. And most people think it's just a nice statue of a woman holding a torch and a book, but actually it's a representative of another ascended master. She is called the Goddess of Liberty. She actually was a human being at one time. She had many incarnations, just as we all do. One of her incarnations was on Atlantis, which was a huge continent that sunk into the ocean, where the Atlantic Ocean is now. And she had built a temple called the Temple of the Sun, which was where Manhattan stands now. That was our East Coast. Some of it was part of Atlantis. And so she had built a temple there. It's no longer in the physical, it's up in the etheric, but it was there where Manhattan is. A later incarnation she had was in the Amazon, where women ruled an ancient civilization there. So all of her lifetime, she was so devoted to liberty. And when she made her ascension, which means she doesn't have to come back in the cycle of reincarnation anymore, she took on the title of Goddess of Liberty. And it was she who appeared to Washington, at least that's my belief, and some others, and she came to show him that America has a destiny. Now, at that time, when she appeared to him, Washington was very distraught. He was actually considering suicide. But when she appeared to him and showed him everything, that really gave him the fortitude. It gave him the courage. It gave him the strength to continue on during that brutal winter, even without enough food and clothing. And he was able to complete his own mission as liberator of the 13 original colonies. Now, I should put a disclaimer here. All of this is my belief and many other people's beliefs. But if it doesn't resonate with you, that's fine. I'm not trying to push my beliefs on you. Just hear it as a story. But I do believe that there are cosmic beings who literally can influence our planet and all the planets in the solar system, the galaxy, and the universes. A lot of that is getting ready to unfold. But we humans think we are the top dog, right? Or the cat's meow, whichever you prefer. We think that we are in charge of this planet and that we can do whatever we want, no consequences. I don't think that's quite true, because I think we have a role to play, and I think we have a responsibility. We do have something else. It's called free will. And we can, either knowingly or unknowingly, be part of the problem or part of the solution? We're at a crossroads right now, and we can choose which way we want to go. Do we want to be part of the problem, or do we want to be part of the solution? It is said that America is the heart of this planet and she has to be protected. And that's what Saint Germain is doing. He is protecting America. He is the greatest benefactor America has ever known. For hundreds of years, as Bill said, he's been seen as something like a 45-year-old man for hundreds of years, because as an ascended master, he can be here in a physical body as much as he wants to. He doesn't have to die anymore and then come back reincarnated. So he has been working on our behalf for hundreds of years. He is in charge of the new civilization. We keep hearing that we're creating a new earth, or you may have heard that. And it's destined to come forth right in our country. The rest of the world is kind of waiting to see what we are doing, and they will one day fall into place as well. So right now, there's a lot of turmoil out there, isn't there? We can, everywhere you look, whether it's on the news or internet, wherever it is, we know there's a lot of violence. There's a lot of wars going on, a lot of hatred. And we're becoming more aware of a lot of trafficking, child trafficking, human trafficking. So much is going on, even by people that we thought we could trust. So at the same time, though, we're entering into something called the violet flame cycle. And that is something that Saint Germain is bringing in. There is a huge influx of light right now onto our planet. I know that sounds woo-woo, but I like woo-woo. Anybody here like woo-woo? Okay, got a few woo-wooers out there. Yes, we are being bombarded with a lot of light, and we've had several solar eclipses, different kinds of solar events lately. It's a very powerful time right now. Saint Germain, his teachings include the use of the violet flame. And that is the seventh ray aspect of the Holy Spirit. It has power. It has the power to transmute negative karma. If we've learned the lesson from some of the karma we've created over our lifetimes, we may not have to actually go through something horrible. We can transmute it with the violet flame by learning to use it. It's also said that the violet flame can consume at least 2/3 of America's discordant human creation. We see a lot of discordant human creation around us. In fact, we're all creating some of it. Anytime that we're not totally in unconditional love, there's some kind of discordance there. So we have, but the thing is, we have free will. They're not allowed to come down and help us, whether it's angels, ascended masters, whoever it is. They can't help us unless we ask. We have to ask. In fact, we have to demand the purification of America. The ascended masters, archangels, they want to help us, but they're waiting to hear from us. We have to make the call. There are so many dark forces in our country, in all countries, all over the world right now, that have an agenda. It's an agenda that has nothing to do with the divine plan. It's an agenda for their own power. They like power, and they want really to diffuse our light. So that's why it's so important. We have to wake up to what's going on. We have to stop going along with things that are not part of a divine plan. I believe in our hearts, we all know when something is part of a divine plan and when it's not. And so what can we do? Besides standing in our truth, standing in our power, we need to invite the higher beings in to help us. Because we have free will, they cannot come unless they hear us call to them. We can do that through prayer. There are positive affirmations, but an even stronger way or more powerful way to do that is through decrees. Now, if any of you have ever read the I Am teachings, which were brought forth back in the 1930s by a man named Guy Ballard, who lived in Mount Shasta, California, and actually met Saint Germain. Saint Germain took him on as a student, him and a couple other people as a student. So they were able to see him in the flesh. But he taught using the violet flame and using decrees. Decrees are, they're more than positive affirmations. They're statements that command an action. And we're taught to connect with our I am presence. Now, you might call it your higher self. It's the same thing, really, but we imagine or visualize our I am presence to be above us. It's our connection with source. And so we ask our I am presence for what we need. So you might have a statement like, I am presence, take command of my being and my world. We are asking them to eradicate the darkness, eradicate those who have a dark agenda. We are commanding them to do this, and they will do it, but they have to hear us ask, preferably out loud, but at least in your heart, but out loud is best to make these kind of statements. If you're more comfortable, you can talk to Jesus, you can talk to Archangel Michael, Mother Mary, Buddha. Buddha is also an ascended master, or Saint Germain, or any of them, and demand that they remove the dark forces from the earth now. You can also visualize the violet flame. You might just close your eyes and imagine that all around you is this violet flame surrounding you, under your feet, all the way up. And ask that it be infused into every cell, every atom, every electron of your physical body, your etheric body, your emotional, and all of your bodies. That's how we bring in the violet flame. That's how we protect ourselves. Those of us who are studying the Telos books, as Mara and I are, or the I Am teachings, we learn to protect ourselves. If we feel we're in danger in some way, we just bring up that violet flame around us and know that that is a protecting light. So we need to understand one thing. We are free. In a way, we don't need a constitution to tell us we're free, because we have God-given rights and we are free. And we are so free that we can either choose a limiting belief or a belief of freedom. I think the time has come for all of us to let go of our limiting beliefs and replace them with an inner knowing that God and your I am presence are in charge of your being and your world. It's time to stand in our power. We're bringing forth a whole new kind of way of living, and we're a part of that. And America is her heart. We're blessed to be right here, right now. So I say, be proud to be an American. That doesn't mean other people are less than or other countries are less than, but since we're here, be proud to be an American. Stand up for her. Love her with all your heart. Yes, there are flaws that we see, but those are human created flaws. Those are human. So I think it's really important for us to stand in our power, claim our God-given human rights, to speak freely without being censored, to breathe freely, to be in charge of our own bodies, whatever we want to do with our body temple. This is a temple. We're in charge of what we put into it. Food, whatever it is. Of course, we're all breathing in toxic air, eating toxic food, drinking toxic water. We all have some kind of immune weaknesses, but we can remedy that. There are many things from the plant kingdom and the mineral kingdom that can bring us back into a healthy being. So right now, I believe the desire for freedom is written on every human heart. And now is the time to choose and demand freedom. So I hope that next Sunday, when you're celebrating hot dogs, potato salad, watermelon, and the Declaration of Independence and our freedom, that you'll remember America and remember to really call out. If you're embarrassed to do it in front of people, get in your car and drive up on a mountain like I do, and you can just shout out your decrees and your prayers and know that they will be answered. So I thank you. I thank you for inviting me here to talk about this. I hope it wasn't too far out for you. Namaste. Thank you.